As a race, we are seekers of truth, longing for something that we subconsciously sense exists, some somewhere we feel we belong, something we sense in the eyes of our fellow beings, like a memory, a silent, unspoken knowledge about ancient truths, about being at a different, about being at a different plane, familiar. That's all it. As a race, we are seekers of truth, longing for something that we subconsciously sense exists. Somewhere we feel we belong, something we sense in the eyes of our fellow beings, like a memory, a silent, unspoken knowledge about ancient truths, about being at a different plane, familiar. Events can awaken this sensation of recognizing something distant historically, a change taking place, altering interactions between people, us, and unexplainable silence within us that we wish to speak, that we wish to express, as if a language was silenced in a distant past, that we know that we are capable of speaking, a language pulling a thread from an ancient past through historical past times up to the present moment, making us revive, again able to understand the purpose of being, the language that makes us understand the decreased freedom of our limiting organization of society's norms, creating a narrow horizon, decreasing possibilities in our everyday lives that make many people ending up being a constant repetition of themselves, because one day it looks like the other, not like children experiencing things for the first time, constantly amazed, excited. The more freedom of thought and behavior is limited, the less excitement, the less amazement, the less is there to experience. Some people understand the joy of someone doing something unexpected in a non-violent manner, of course, like being around children's unpredictability and a positive understanding of the world. Children express themselves in their own ways, not as a repetition of everybody else, not a cliche of predictability. Children put smiles on our faces, whereas most grown-ups forget how to wonder, how to be amazed, how to enjoy the seemingly minor events, like breathing in fresh air, the sensation of rain on your skin, the body embraced gently by water in the sea, etc. Children at some point have not yet been inhibited by grown-ups destroying their ability to be amazed, to wonder, telling them not to talk about such nonsense. When change is at play, some people have rigid, content attitudes to the decreased freedom of uncomplicated organization of society's own, the hierarchy that exists, also unspoken, sometimes because of when change is at play, some people have rigid, content attitudes to the decreased freedom of uncomplicated organization of society's own, the hierarchy that exists also unspoken, sometimes because of A lazy attitude to life, a comfortability of the routine of everyday life, unflexible in relation to change. Yeah. Strange sentence that seemed to not be finished because I don't. It's I write it very fast, so I make mistakes. But because it takes energy and effort to having to change yourself, but it takes even more effort and energy to resist change, which is draining and unhealthy, awakening behavior or amplifying the behavior historically that caused the limitations and the stagnation of evolution, having shut doors in the past, having abandoned because of past power struggles, no longer at play. When change is at play, some people have rigid, content attitudes to the decreased freedom of uncomplicated organization of society's order, the hierarchy that exists, also unspoken, sometimes because of a lazy attitude to life, a comfortability of the routine of everyday life, unflexible in relation to change, because it takes energy and effort to having to change yourself, but it takes even more effort and energy to resist change, which is draining and unhealthy, awakening behavior or amplifying the behavior historically that caused the limitations and the stagnation of evolution, having shut doors in the past, having abandoned because of past power struggles no longer at play, but being irrelevantly awakened in the present times, creating understanding through thoughts about if analyzed the present in relation to similar past events, a stagnation of potential in society that make people perceive vitality, being lively and awake, almost every expression of this kind unnatural and deviating behavior, imprisoning societies, figuratively speaking, limiting us, remaking people that turn into unflexible beings, both when it comes to the ability to reflect, to understand, physical inflexibility, making people I've written this very fast. Misinterpreting free bodily movement and the natural sounds of the body, making us hold our breaths not to be interpreted pornographically. The body is made to walk, run, dance, jump, etc. The lungs meant to breathe deeply and freely. If sexualized to an extreme extent, you will attempt to repress yourself not to be misinterpreted. Children move freely, express themselves freely from the onset of our lives, being more or less limited in the act of expressing ourselves. This is the formation of the superego, creating inhibitions, Some are necessary, some are crippling our existence, our possibilities. Some fit into a society controlled, misgoverned by a beast of a superego, demanding constant regulations to uphold the repression of the oppressed potential of specific types of people or of a society as a whole, making us as individuals and countries unable to elevate, to compete, to accomplish. The blank space of inhibited of brain damages, figuratively speaking, none understimulate the receptors having become inactive, sometimes not only specifically geographical, but as a ping-pong effect globally, breaking down the tower that was illegalized because of a lack of better solutions to the problem of the need to control the universe, to make ourselves the creators of the universe, to raise ourselves above the universe, controlling with a human force of superiority. See it as the past and the present being tied together by a rope, knots appearing at some point up to present times, having to be untied in order for equality of every kind to become the newborn reality, linking us freely, healthily to the past, forgotten language that has been silenced for too long because of a thirst for power over people. It is said by a philosopher that what we cannot control, we should not attempt to control. Not a direct quotation, but the thirst for power is about fear and control, about trying to not just keeping the status quo, but even attempting to shrink the horizon and the space in which movement is possible, creating narrow, tunnel-like space to navigate within, having to break through the walls of the tunnels because of the impossibility to switch smoothly between spaces that are not blocked by pornographic power thirst, making minor, otherwise simple, easy tasks, warlike tasks to overcome. That is how the imprint into the space we live in on this globe make possible or impossible opportunities. When an extremity of oppression awakens to rebel, the opposite side of oppressed, or even several opposites of various degrees, angle-wise awaken, like do the oppressors. Even the oppressed may seem like oppressors. Opposites amplify in a cause and effect kind of way, back and forth, a very complicated process to fully comprehend because people are not God. When the process is going on, looking for clues and signs are helpful, for instance, being enlightened historically. When it comes to religion, culture, politics, etc., signs could be the behavior of people towards you, linking it to historical events, time periods, being aware of which historical archetypes you resemble the most in order to understand your surroundings and what is at play in a shadow or projection of the past type of way. It gives you tools and strategies on how to deal with the situation that seems real yet not completely real in its naked original characteristic way, but as the past reflected onto the present times, making it a vivid dream, difficult to place, handle, but still less dangerous, though it may seem as real and thereby life-threatening, though not actually is, merely a nightmare-like reflection, blurring perception of people because of a collective subconscious feeling of unreality, um, making us confused because we do not know other answers than the ones already given in the past that do not fit into the civilization at the present time, since laws and rules stand in the way, making progress and the liberation of potential possible. An example is Rosemary's Baby, that is both a cultural movie fiction narrative at the same time as it is a real historical event in the shape of the sister of JFK and RFK being lobotomized. Um, Fiction should be impossibilized, if that's the word, by laws. Though psychiatry might attempt to make the fictional story a reality. Various public institutions being at play with gaslighting tendencies, lobotomy was illegalized a long time ago, making the procedure not possible in the present times. When both attempts have been defeated, the archetype has found the way out of the trap, which then makes the fear of the unreal yet real projection less vivid, having paved the way out of the trap. You stumble upon other types of characters fitting into, in various ways, the archetypes that may be multiple at play, that also gives you clues in relation to which archetypal events fictional linked to historical event traps you need to pave ways to overcome, making it not only useful but also morally correct to help out archetypal trapped, making you needing to multitask as not everybody is the reason for the situation. You may very vividly recognize historical characters resembling them so much physically that it makes reality seem to be placed somewhere between life and death. You may recognize clones of a buried brother, buried historical character, making you have shadow-like linked to the person's emotions towards them, making you understand another type of archetypal trap that might give you clues on how to deal with the situation, especially in relation to a deceased brother, also in relation to a historical character, making you wonder how the situation is linked historically because it is nowhere to find even when you know the lifespan of the historical character the person resembles, making you think about whether or not Jacqueline Kennedy lookalike was put there by circumstances to somehow put the past into order, paying for the deeds of the historical person.